The decision that changed everything. The road was quiet that morning. Too quiet. A thin layer of fog hung in the air, blurring the edges of the world, just like the uncertainty clouding Arav's mind. He sat alone on a broken bench near the old railway crossing, holding a crumpled piece of paper in his trembling hands. It was his resignation letter, written, signed, and ready. All he had to do was submit it. For years people had told him, "Be patient, keep trying, don't give up." But no one ever explained how heavy those words could feel when life keeps pushing you down again and again. No one warned him how exhausting hope could become when it keeps getting delayed. Arav was tired, not just physically but emotionally, deep in his bones, in his heart. He was tired of waking up every day with dreams that felt farther away than yesterday. Tired of trying when nothing seemed to change. Tired of believing when belief brought only disappointment. At that moment, quitting felt peaceful. A life full of effort, not results. Arav had always been a hard worker. Born into a modest family, he learned early that nothing would be handed to him easily. His father worked long hours as a mechanic, his hands always covered in oil, his face worn by responsibility. His mother stitched clothes late into the night to support the family. From childhood, Arav promised himself, "One day I'll make their sacrifices worth it." He studied under dim lights during power cuts. He skipped celebrations to prepare for exams. While others enjoyed their youth, he chose discipline and dreams. He believed effort always led to success, but life had a different lesson planned. Despite good grades, he struggled to find a stable job. Interviews ended with polite smiles and empty promises. "We'll get back to you," they said, but never did. When he finally got a job, it paid little and demanded everything. Months turned into years. Friends moved ahead. Better jobs, marriages, cars, confidence. Arav stayed stuck, watching life pass by like a train he couldn't board. Slowly, comparisons replaced confidence. Doubt replaced hope. He began asking himself painful questions. Am I not good enough? Did I choose the wrong path? What if all this effort means nothing? The breaking point. The day everything broke was not dramatic. No loud argument. No sudden tragedy. Just silence. Arav sat across from his manager, listening to words that felt heavier than insults. "We're restructuring. We won't be needing your position anymore." Just like that, years of effort erased. He walked home in shock, his mind numb. At home, his parents noticed the forced smile but said nothing. They had learned to trust his strength. That night, Arav didn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling, replaying every failure, every rejection, every moment he told himself to keep going. For the first time, a dangerous thought felt comforting. What if I stopped trying? The next morning, he wrote the resignation letter, not just from the job but from his dreams. And now, sitting on that bench near the railway crossing, he felt empty. An unexpected encounter. As Arav sat lost in his thoughts, the sound of a walking stick tapping the ground pulled him back to the present. An old man slowly approached and sat beside him without asking. They sat in silence for a while. Then the old man spoke gently. "You look like someone carrying a heavy decision." Arav forced a smile. "Just tired." The old man nodded, as if he understood more than Arav had said. "Tired doesn't mean weak," he replied. "It usually means you've been strong for too long." Something in those words cracked Arav's defenses. He looked at the old man. Wrinkled face, kind eyes, clothes faded by time. There was a quiet strength about him. "Have you ever felt like quitting?" Arav asked suddenly. The old man smiled softly. "More times than I can count." He pointed toward the railway tracks. "You see those tracks? I worked there for 30 years. Lost my job twice. Lost my wife early. Lost my savings in a bad decision." Arav listened, surprised. "I failed more than I succeeded." The old man continued. "But do you know what kept me alive? Not successful, but alive. Not because I knew things would get better, but because stopping would have ended every possibility." The meaning of real victory. The old man leaned forward. "People think victory is success, money, titles, applause. But real victory happens much earlier." He tapped his chest. "It happens the moment you decide not to give up." Arav frowned. "But what if nothing changes?" The old man smiled again. "Everything changes, even if you don't see it immediately. When you keep going, you grow stronger, wiser, more prepared. Life tests persistence before it rewards progress." He stood up slowly, adjusting his walking stick. "Remember this, son. Quitting ends pain quickly, but it also ends hope. Continuing hurts longer, but it keeps your future alive." Before Arav could respond, the old man walked away, disappearing into the fog. Arav sat there, staring at the resignation letter in his hands. For the first time that day, he didn't feel like tearing it apart or submitting it. A small but powerful choice. Arav went home and placed the letter in a drawer instead of throwing it away. It was a small act, but it mattered. The next few weeks were not magical. He faced more rejections. Some days he felt motivated. Other days he felt broken. But something had changed inside him. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" he began asking, "What can I learn from this?" He started improving his skills. He took online courses late at night. He reached out to people he once felt too ashamed to contact. He failed again and again, but he didn't stop. Each day he reminded himself, "I don't need to win today. I just need to keep going." When life finally responds, one evening months later, Arav received an email. It wasn't extraordinary, just an interview invitation. Normally he would have felt nervous. This time he felt calm.
He walked into the interview room, not as a desperate man, but as someone who had survived his lowest point. When they asked about failures, he spoke honestly. When they asked about challenges, he spoke confidently. He wasn't trying to impress, he was simply being real. A week later, he got the call. He didn't shout, he didn't cry, he just closed his eyes and whispered, "Thank you," not because he had succeeded, but because he hadn't quit. Looking back, years later, Arav would often think about that bench near the railway crossing, about the fog, about the resignation letter. He realized something powerful. If he had quit that day, no one would have called him a failure. People would have understood, but he would have lost something far more important than a job. He would have lost himself. Now, whenever life felt heavy again, as it always does at times, he remembered one simple truth. The decision to keep going is often the real victory, because success is not always about reaching the destination. Sometimes, it's about refusing to stop walking, especially when the road feels endless. Final message: if you are tired, if you feel stuck, if you feel like quitting, remember this: you don't have to see the whole path. You don't have to feel strong every day. You just have to make one decision. Keep going, because that decision alone can change everything.
Success did not arrive like a celebration. There were no drums, no applause, no sudden transformation of life into perfection. Arav's new job paid better. Yes, but more importantly, it demanded more responsibility, more patience, and more courage. Life had not become easier. It had simply given him a chance to continue. And strangely, that was enough. New struggles, same choice. The first few months were overwhelming. Arav often stayed late, learning systems he had never used before, fixing mistakes that made him question himself again. Younger colleagues seemed faster, smarter, more confident. Old doubts returned quietly. What if I don't belong here? What if this too slips away? Some nights he sat alone in his room, staring at his laptop screen, exhaustion weighing heavy on his chest. The temptation to give up didn't disappear just because he had moved forward. It simply changed shape. That was when Arav understood something important. Keeping going is not a one-time decision. It is a choice you make again and again, every single day. The quiet strength of consistency. Instead of chasing perfection, Arav focused on consistency. He showed up, even on days he felt insecure. He asked questions, even when he feared looking foolish. He corrected mistakes instead of hiding them. Slowly, people began to notice, not his brilliance but his reliability. "You don't quit easily," his supervisor once said casually. That sentence stayed with him. Arav realized that the world often rewards talent, but it trusts perseverance. Remembering the old man. One evening while returning from work, Arav passed the old railway crossing again. The bench was still there, weathered by time. He sat down, memories rushing back. He looked around, half expecting to see the old man with the walking stick. He never did. But the words returned clearly. Quitting ends pain quickly, but it also ends hope. Arav smiled faintly. At that bench months ago, he had been ready to disappear from his own life. Now he was still tired, but he was moving. Still uncertain, but alive with purpose. When life tests you again. Just when Arav began feeling stable, life tested him once more. His father fell ill. Medical bills piled up quickly. Savings disappeared. Sleep became rare. Arav found himself running between hospital corridors and office deadlines, stretched thin from every side. One night, sitting beside his father's hospital bed, Arav felt that old heaviness return. "I can't do this anymore," he thought. His father noticed his silence. "Beta," he said softly, gripping Arav's hand. "Don't break yourself carrying everything alone." Arav swallowed hard. "I'm trying, Abu. I really am." His father smiled weakly. "Trying is enough. Just don't stop." Those words, so simple, so familiar, hit deeper than anything else. Once again, Arav chose to keep going. A different definition of strength. During those difficult months, Arav learned that strength isn't loud. Strength looks like going to work after a sleepless night, smiling when your heart is exhausted, choosing responsibility over comfort, continuing, even without motivation. He learned that courage is not confidence, it is movement despite fear. And most importantly, he learned that life does not reward those who never fall, it rewards those who refuse to stay down, becoming someone else's hope. One day, a new intern joined the office, a quiet young man named Samir. He reminded Arav of himself years ago. Unsure, nervous, trying too hard to prove his worth. Samir often stayed silent in meetings, afraid of making mistakes. One evening, Arav noticed him sitting alone, staring blankly at his screen. "Long day?" Arav asked. Samir nodded. "I don't think I'm good enough for this place." Arav sat beside him. "I used to feel the same," he said. Samir looked surprised. "Really? But you're so confident." Arav smiled gently. Confidence came later. First came doubt, then failure, then the decision not to quit. He paused, then added, "You don't need to be the best, just don't give up on yourself." That night, Arav realized something powerful. The moment you survive your hardest days, you unknowingly become a guide for someone else. Full circle, years passed. Arav's career grew steadily. His father recovered. Life remained imperfect, but meaningful. One foggy morning, Arav found himself near the same railway crossing again. He sat on the bench, watching people rush past, each carrying invisible battles.
He took out a small notebook and wrote a single sentence: "The decision to keep going is often the real victory." He understood it now, not as a quote, but as a lived truth. Victory wasn't the job. Victory wasn't money. Victory wasn't comfort. Victory was every moment he chose not to quit, when quitting felt easier. Final reflection: life will test you again. There will be new disappointments, new failures, new moments where stopping feels tempting. But remember this: you don't need to win every battle. You don't need to feel strong every day. You just need to decide again and again to keep going. Because long after the pain fades, long after the struggle ends, the courage you showed by not giving up will remain your greatest achievement.